Well, hello there, and welcome to a look at the sky in February 2021 as winter gets stuck in. First of all, now we have a few IAA events coming up. Wednesday, 3rd of February, 7:30 on Zoom. Pete Williamson from Astro Radio will be joining us and talking about remote telescopes for public and educational access. Now, Pete is a great user of remote telescopes. He does his own as well, of course. But he's taken some fantastic pictures of things that you can't see from here and that kind of thing. And he'll be talking to us about that. It'll be most interesting, particularly in lockdown. Also, on the 17th of February, Dr. Ernst de Muuy from Queen's University Belfast, he's spoken to us before. I don't have the title for his talk yet, but knowing Ernst's area of expertise, it'll probably be something to do with exoplanets. And of course, it's amazing to think that just sort of 27, 28 years ago, there were no known exoplanets, and now there's several thousand of them. So that will be fascinating too, if that's what it is. They will be delivered, because we're in the pandemic still, by Zoom. So go to our website, irishastro.org, and there'll be the Zoom addresses will be published there, and you can log in from about 7:15 onwards. We'll try and get everyone in the room for a 7:30 sharp start by the speaker. Also, for those of you who don't want to join in Zoom, we are simulcasting. We simulcast all of these to our YouTube channel. See that at the bottom there. That's and also if you go to our website irishastro.org, it's the red YouTube button at the top left will take you to our YouTube channel. So that's what's going on in the IAA. Now then, the sun. The sun is completely blank at the moment, as of the 1st of February. And however, that's not the full picture. You'll see here that at the very bottom of the solar minimum, 2019, 281 days out of 365 were spotless. That's 77%. In 2020, that was 208. That's 57%. And now that we're getting into 2021, we see that we're down to 16 days of the first 32 of 2021 were spotless. That's 50%. And we can expect that figure to drop. If we go back and look at this at the last solar cycle, you see we went to 73, 71, and then suddenly down to 14. So I would say 2010, this is an 11-year cycle. So 2021, we're probably looking at that 50% figure maybe dropping as the year moves on. And hopefully we'll get into some auroras in a year or two, certainly. So that's the way the sun is looking at the minute. Now, there is also a coronal hole on the front of the sun. And should the weather ever clear, the 1st and 2nd of February stands a chance of possible auroras arising from that coronal hole. So we'll keep an eye on that. There are things happening in the sky, aurora-wise. Here is a picture from André Andritku of Tromsø, Norway, taken on the 28th of January. So not quite as far south as us yet, but it is happening. So that's always good to know. Now then, the planets. There was a time at the end of last year where there were lots and lots of planets, and that's not the situation at the moment. Jupiter and Saturn and Venus are all behind the Sun, so not terribly visible at all. Jupiter and Saturn will appear early in the morning towards the end of February. However, it's not the best time to see them because the angle of the ecliptic is very shallow at that point, and neither of them will be terribly high up. Saturn will come out first and might be visible before you get to see Jupiter. Jupiter is, of course, the brighter of the two planets. Mars, however, is still quite bright and reasonably observable up in Aries. It's not as big in a scope as it was at opposition back in October, but still quite bright and quite good to look at. Mercury. Now, Mercury will join Jupiter and Saturn at the end of the month. That's right, yeah. But you might also catch it just in the evening, in the first few days of February. So that's it, just around sunset. But that's very close to the sun, so don't even go looking for that before the sun has set. And you've probably, frankly, seen the best of that apparition. But end of the month with Jupiter and Saturn, you might see that. Uranus and Neptune. You'll need binoculars for both of them. Some people say they can see Uranus with the naked eye. I never have. Magnitude 5.8, so it's perfectly possible, but I've never managed it. But visible in Aries, not far from Mars, actually, Uranus. They did have quite a close conjunction in January. And Neptune is in Aquarius, magnitude 7.9. You'll need to sort of get a chart out to go and find Neptune. Now then, the International Space Station has 2 sets of passes during February. First of all, the remainder of the current run of evening passes runs through to the 7th of February. We've seen the best of those actually, but the one on the 3rd of February perhaps might be the best of the remaining ones, 33 degrees high. So that's a reasonably good pass there, 1756 on the 3rd of February. That's Wednesday, just before the IAA meeting. Going to the end of the month, 22nd onwards and into March, there's some early morning passes, and some of those look quite good. I would sort of pick on 26th of February, 0611 for the early birds, and 28th of February, 0612. Those would be the pick of the bunch there. So that's the passes of the International Space Station. You have to remember there are currently 7 astronauts on the International Space Station. It was normally the case that there were 6 because there were 2 Soyuz loads, each of 3 astronauts. But this the latest lot were taken up by the Crew Dragon, and that took 4 astronauts up. So there are now 7 to wave at as the ISS goes past. Now here's something to look out for on the 12th of February. Unusually I've set this to show 1700 hours in the evening. That's just shortly after sunset. And if you start looking around towards the western sky at that sort of time, you may get the chance to see a 1% illuminated new moon. So that's one of the youngest moons it's possible to see, less than 1 day old. My own personal record on this is an 18 hours and 32 minutes moon that I saw over Belfast, and that was also in February a few years ago. So that's well worth looking out for, but very, very difficult to see. What I actually did, I had a scout round with binoculars and couldn't see it, but I just took loads of photographs where I thought it would be, and a couple of them did actually have the very thin moon in the frame. So that's well worth looking for. And there, just to get the wider view of that, is actually a little bit closer to southwest than west, but that's where you need to be looking. You'll see really quite close to the horizon too. Now then, let's have a look at some deep sky objects, and as we did last month, we will look towards the south, because simply that is the best part of the sky this time of year. We're looking at the area that's variously called Big G. Here's your G starting at Betelgeuse, Rigel, Sirius, Procyon, Pollux and Castor, Capella and Aldebaran. That's your Big G. Or if you prefer the winter hexagon, we'll start again at Sirius, up to Procyon, Castor and Pollux, Capella, Aldebaran, Rigel, Sirius. That's the winter hexagon. Both fairly new descriptions of the area, but a lot of excitement going on in it. Now let's first of all, let's focus on Sirius here. This is quite an interesting time to be observing Sirius because Sirius has a partner star, Sirius B, and the difference in brightness couldn't be more obvious. Sirius is about minus 1.5 magnitude. Sirius B is 8.5, so there's 10 magnitudes between the two stars, and they're very, very close together, as we see in this picture here. And now is a particularly good time if you've never actually managed to observe a white dwarf. It's a difficult observation, and you'll probably need something like an 8 or 10 inch telescope, or if you've got a 6-inch refractor, the refractor might help actually separate the two stars better. But Sirius and Sirius B are about as far apart as they ever get in their orbit at the moment. It's a 50-year orbit, so they won't be this far apart again for another 50 years. They sort of start closing up and get more difficult to separate the two. But that's a great binary star, Sirius and Sirius B. Okay, now looking at that southern sky again, let's find a star here called Zeta Tauri, and that's it there, Tianguan, Zeta Tauri. Now we find Zeta Tauri by starting at Aldebaran, and then we find a line from Aldebaran to the star Mebsuta in Gemini. That's quite prominent too, and just over halfway along that line is Tianguan, Zeta Tauri, and we'll zoom in on that. It's a fairly unassuming third magnitude star and not of great importance, but it serves as a superb signpost for the Crab Nebula, and that's the object that's going to interest us at the moment. Goes back to Charles Messier, French astronomer. He was a comet man. He was interested in comets. He wasn't really interested in galaxies, nebulae, open clusters, planetary nebulas, and all that sort of thing that comprise the Messier catalogue to this day. But he was actually interested in finding things that weren't comets and so therefore weren't of interest to him. And he made a catalogue of those, which eventually, with contributions from others, came up to the 110 Messier objects that we know today. And of course, the thing about the Crab Nebula is that it was number 1. This is Messier 1, and let's zoom in closer, and we get a nice picture of it. That is Messier 1, the Crab Nebula, and that is a supernova remnant. That is to say, it's what's left of a star that exploded in the year 1054 and was well observed by Chinese astronomers at the time. And that gave rise to the Messier catalogue of 110 objects, so that's worth bearing in mind. I'm a big fan of the Messier catalogue. Of course, it's not as big and comprehensive as the new general catalogue, which has many more objects, and of course was originated at Armagh Observatory, so there's a local connection there to the NGC. And but that's it, Messier 1. See if you can find that. You'll need a big telescope. You'll need at least something like an 8 or 10 inch Dobsonian to see that as a fuzzy patch. To get any kind of detail on it at all, you'll need to be taking pictures. So that's one for the astrophotographers amongst us. And I will mention, by the way, if you go to the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies website, dias.ie, they are running an astrophotography competition, and look at the details there. It is open to anyone on the island of Ireland, and they're looking for pictures taken between January the 1st, 2020 and the 31st of March, and you need your entries in, I think, by just after the end of March. So do have a look at that, dias.ie. So that's all I have to say for the moment, other than stay safe, keep looking up, and thanks for watching.